Hello folks, are you ready for some lore grumbles? Because I've got Maka here from the Outer Circle, and we're about to do some lore grumbling. How you doing, man?
I'm great. How you doing?
Excellent. Yeah, I've just recovered from you showing me all those models before and making me very jealous of my own heresy force that I still haven't started building yet, but need to get on that pretty soon. So,
Yeah, great weekend. Whew.
yeah, man. I mean, for those of you who don't know what we're doing today, we are looking at 3 pieces of Warhammer 40k lore. Or is it 30k as well? I think both, isn't it? It's Warhammer in general. So, 3 pieces
I
of...
think they're all interrelated.
Yeah, 3 pieces of 30k, 40k lore that we don't like, or we don't think works very well, and that we would change. But we can't just grumble. You said this last time, didn't we? We've got to figure out how we change it. And I've got one of them today, which I think I know how I change it, but I might fall down in my explanation of how I do it, because it's a bit bonkers. But anyway, do you want to go first, or should I go first? What do you want to do?
Your show. You can have the opening.
Yeah, bollocks to it, I'll go first. Alright, my first one then. Horus turning traitor. It's a biggie. It's a biggie. But it's something that I've never liked. It's just something that I always... As somebody who writes a lot and reads a lot, it just rubs me up the wrong way. It's silly. It's silly. Horus has no agency in the choice, because he literally isn't given a choice. He's given a choice of, you know, join this well of souls that's going to kill you, or, you know, become this dark god person. It's very similar, if anyone's read Berserk, it's very similar to the choice Griffith is given, where he's like, spoilers by the way, where they like say, hey, do you want to sacrifice all your friends to become a devil god person, or do you want to have your soul ripped apart for 1,000 years and then eventually you're digested by the universe? I'll have option A, please. You know, it's not really a choice. You know, nobody would make the choice to say, okay, I'll just die and be tortured forever. It's fine. Horus is given the same choice, and it never sits well with me. It never sits well with me that all of the good work of Horus Rising and False Gods are all kind of thrown away. All that really good character work we've done with Horus is kind of just left on the side, you know? And I think it's one of those symptoms of old school 40k lore, before Horus Heresy was even a thing, 30k was even a thing, old school 40k lore, where they didn't really think of characterization. They just needed to get character A to character B to character C and to do these things in order. They needed Horus to turn traitor, they needed Horus to get to Terra, and they needed Horus to die to the Emperor, right? After crippling him. That's what they needed him to do. And it's something that really works when you don't look under the hood, when you don't know how the sausage is made. It really worked in White Dwarf articles where they spoke about the Siege of Terra. It's what got me into 40k, sitting there reading that whilst listening to some music in the background, probably like, you know, some heavy metal or something. And it was an amazing transcendent moment of reading this article in White Dwarf that was like this parchment where it showed you like what happened at the Siege of Terra. And it was very macro. It didn't show you nitty gritty. You didn't see Sigismund fighting Khan and shit like that, but it just showed you what happened and the tragedy of what happened and how the Emperor ended up in the Golden Throne. And it was an amazing 20-page spread. I've still got it. It's amazing. I absolutely love it. But Horus Heresy works that way. It doesn't really work when you start looking at the nitty gritty, when you start looking at the minutiae of what's going on. And I think that's why Horus turning traitor doesn't really work for me, how it is now. Before I go into how I would change it, what do you reckon? Is that something that you think as well? Or do you think I'm bonkers?
Oh, I think you're a little bit bonkers. Yeah. I don't know. I do agree that he sort of feels like he lacks agency in the decision, but I think I'm comfortable with it. I can tolerate it.
Okay. That's cool. I also think that building primarchs up to be these unwoundable dudes, and then you know, Horus is wounded by some dude, Yugen Temba. He's literally just a possessed dude. He's not a marine. He's not, you know, he's just a possessed dude with a sword made of poo, and he stabs him with it, and it just never really pulled at me. I don't think I think the best traitor fall I've ever seen was Lorgar, because I could completely understand where he was coming from. Do you know what I mean? I got it. I was like, you know what? Yeah, I understand. you should understand why Horus turns traitor. You should be able to look at it from a completely logical point of view and go, do you know what? I can see what you're doing there. Yeah, I can see that completely. So Horus turning, I actually have two options for this. The first one is that he's a psyker or a latent psyker who has dreams, and he has dreams all of his life, and he fights against them, sort of a thing. They're always dreams of the 41st millennium as it is, and it horrifies him. And he's actually, you know, well into the Emperor not being a god, and he's a normal man and that kind of a thing. And I would actually have Lorgar and Horus be a lot closer in relationship, like almost be like the two closest brothers of the entire group. They're like really, really, really together, because they're seen as the Emperor's favourites. So Horus is the Emperor's favourite in terms of a warrior. Lorgar is the Emperor's favourite because he looks most like the Emperor and he acts most like the Emperor, but obviously he's a lot more religious and a lot more, you know, as much as the Emperor acknowledges science, Lorgar acknowledges faith, and the Emperor kind of weirdly respects that because he's completely in on it, kind of a thing. Even though he hates it, you know, he kind of goes, you know what, he's got his convictions, you know, it is what it is. And I would actually have Monarchia happen, you know, the first heretic happens, all that really good juicy stuff happens with Lorgar, and Horus is hurt by that, because he's like, well, you just embarrassed my brother in front of everybody, and you did this, and eventually Lorgar he has his own fall, and he starts to work on Horus constantly, like the devil on his shoulder, always saying, look, you know, and Horus's tactics get more and more and more, you know, overtly brutal as he goes on, until finally, in his dreams, he's not killed or anything like that, because it happens to him. They go back to that well loads of times, like you know, he gets killed by Lehman Russ somehow, you know, and I just they repeat the same tropes over and over and over again. I would actually have Horus just approached in the warp by somebody, just like by the Chaos Gods who give him it to him straight. They say, look at the power we've given your brother Lorgar. Look at what Lorgar's vision for the galaxy is. And they show him the visions of a wondrous galaxy that's just filled with faith and light, and Horus is the main guy at the top of it, you know, and everything's fine. And they basically manipulate him just like they do in False Gods. They do a very, very, very much a similar thing, but they frame it as... One thing I've always hated is that the Chaos Gods frame themselves as the victims. How? Mr. Warp Spawn full of tentacles, how are you the victim here? You know, it just doesn't work. They shouldn't do that. They should say, no, we are pieces of shit, but we're not lying to you, right? The Emperor lies to you. Absolutely. The Emperor wants to be a god, he wants this, he wants that, and the 41st millennium will come around if you don't act now. Of course, the tragedy therein is that Lorgar is tricking him. Lorgar's using his really close relationship and his brotherly bond with Horus to trick him into bringing about the very future that means faith rules the galaxy. And it's very dark. There's like a message on religion there. Do you know what I mean? So it's a very dark 41st millennium that he ends up bringing around. And that's how I would do it. I would just get rid of all of the shenanigans that don't make much sense for a Primarch to fall into. Do you know what I mean? It's kind of like seeing a bear trap on the floor and go, oh, I wonder what would happen if I step into this. And then, oh my god, my leg's just been mangled. Like, yeah, Horus, yes. You know, you trusted the big tentacle demon monster thing. Yes, that's what happened. And, you know, then we go into the Horus Heresy from there. It's just a pulling back of, you know, the more weird nonsense that I think was meant to be left on the cutting room floor or never explained. Do you know what I mean? That's the main issue with Horus turning traitor. I don't think it was ever meant to be explained in depth. And when they came to do it in the Horus Heresy, they just kind of went verbatim of what was in White Dwarf, when they could have changed it up and had it make actually more sense. And I always love just to finish off this entire thing, the main thing I like to write about and read about is sort of the human heart in conflict with itself. And I think having Horus, in essence, manipulated by the one closest to him would add a much more tragic lean to his story, which he doesn't really have right now, because he makes all of these decisions that kind of take me out of it, that kind of make me go, you're not acting like a normal human being, dude. You're not acting like a rational human being. you know. And the choice he's given isn't a choice. It's literally, you know, accept all of this power or die and leave the Imperium gone, you know, dead, essentially, you know, because you're the main man here. That's not a choice. You know, it's just, I don't like it. I don't like the fact that, I think it's much more interesting if Horus is actually given a choice of, you know, the Chaos Gods say, look, we'll take you, but we'll take Lorgar too. We've got Lorgar, we don't need you. You know? We want you to lead the forces of Chaos, but we don't need you to. Lorgar's already our man. You do what you want to do. And he makes that choice of his own free volition. That would be much more interesting to me than the big tentacle demon monster saying, accept or die. You know? Yeah. So that's my first one. I know, controversial, mental, right out of the gate. What's your first one? Let's jump in. I'm very interested to hear this. What's the first Mako Lord Grumble?
Can I top Horus?
Well,
I think my
I
first
took on
one
a lot
would
there.
have to be,
I will admit I took on a lot there, but yeah.
Yeah, mine would have to be Belisarius Cawl and the Primaris Marines. Not because I dislike them, I just dislike the original implementation of them and everything that they represent. So, you know, you can do things like have new technology and new things like that, but I feel that the way it should have been handled is that, you know, the Imperium needs to be reactionary. It can't be innovative, because that's just a core tenet, I think. Like, if you wrote down a list of rules, you know how there's like rules for different science fiction universes, like Star Trek, you know, there needs to be a set of rules for 40k. And from 40k, it should be the Imperium is reactionary, and technologically regressive. You know, I think those are cornerstones of their identity. Because if you can invent new things, then why aren't you inventing more new things? And you can say, oh, well, you know, the tech priests and blah, 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 but because you've introduced Belisarius Cawl, you've essentially nullified that excuse, you know? So what should have happened was Fabius Bile should have made a whole bunch of his genetically perfected Marines, because, you know, just enhanced, not even perfected, you know? Because he's had the time to do it. He's had countless lifetimes, and unlike Belisarius Cawl, he's been gifted the knowledge of primarchs. He's been given basically the ability to do unsanctioned tests. Like, he can do all the messed up things that would be denied to a loyalist, because they're like, look, that's, you know, that's not okay doing those sort of experiments. Now, because Fabius Bile is like a Dr. Mengele type, you know? And so he would have done these things and created these just superior Chaos Space Marines, at least superior in their combat ability, even if they're like crazed madmen or something like that. And I think Belisarius Cawl should have made the Primaris Marines as more a perfected Thunder Warrior and a like an aside to regular Marines as a consequence of this, or at least the initial Primaris Marines would have been like Thunder Warriors, but basically perfected like what Thunder Warriors could have been to justify their superior skill set. And then over time, as the Indominus Crusade sort of kicks into gear, he modifies them and they change things up and such until they eventually morph Marines and Thunder Warriors together to create the true Primaris Marines. I think that might have been a better approach to it. I would keep them as separate things, as Primaris Marines versus regular Marines, if I could, but because they're getting rid of the firstborn Marines now, you may as well just blur them together later on down the line. Just the way it was initially done to me seemed super sloppy, and it was just a way for them to get the models out the door. So I don't deny that that's a thing they have to do as a company. It just felt really slimy when they did it. Yeah, what's your thoughts on that?
Do you ever think, because Games Workshop have these models a good year or two in advance, right? Do you not think that that excuse falls flat when you know that, when they had all this time to put something in place? It wasn't just like, going, oh my god, Dave, the models are out. Look at this. You know, they knew it was coming. You know,
well, if people buy it anyway, it's the fans to blame, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was. I can't really disagree with you. I can't, because at the end of the day, it was sloppily done. Like, it was an excuse to have all of these new things, and as a GW manager at the time, I will admit, I didn't really care at the time. I was like, you know what? Like, yeah, but I can sell all these cool models, and I've got bigger Space Marines now that will have all these bells and whistles on them. So the lore itself, I don't really care. Like, I've got my toys, and I think a lot of people had the same sort of outlook on it. It was only people like yourself and on some greybeards that I knew who were like, hang on a minute, this is a load of nonsense. Like, the issue that I've got with it is the first one you picked up, where you said it goes against one of the core tenets of the entire setting. That's the issue. Doing weird stuff in 40k is par for the course. Do you know what I mean? I don't care if you do weird stuff in 40k. All right, well, sue me. It's 40k. But like, there are certain core tenets of the setting that should be sacrosanct. As soon as you start bending those and manipulating those, it's kind of like watching that 8th season of Game of Thrones, where characters was all of a sudden teleporting across the map, when in season 1 it would take them all season to get from one end of the world to the other, because it was very realistic and very, very nicely done logistically. Now all of a sudden they're teleporting because they don't give a shit anymore. And I've always said this about other settings like Divinity and things like that, because Divinity has like skeleton people and lizard people and talking chickens and all this other nonsense. Okay, mate, if you don't take your setting seriously, neither do I. And I'm going to lose interest. It doesn't have any internal rules. That's something that Tolkien laid down way back in the day, right? You need internal rules, you need to stick to them, and if it's different now, if this is a different thing that you're talking about, then you need to explain it. You need to explain why. Star Trek did that all the time. It's a new dongly fongle thing we found, and it does this, and that's why it breaks the rules right now. Okay, fine. And the reason why I think a lot of people found the Primaris Marines, at least when they're lore people, they found it very insulting, is because Games Workshop never bothered doing that. They just told you, here are the Primaris Marines. They didn't tell you why Belisarius Cawl had remit now to do this. They didn't tell you why, all of a sudden, all of the rules we've been told over the past 20, 30 years are null and void when it comes to this one thing. It literally read, as you said, as we need these models out now, and we don't give a shit about the law. The law will bend and break to do what we want it to do, which is not what we want. Do you know what I mean? So I completely agree with you. Absolutely, completely agree with you in terms of the Primaris Marines. I'm going to take a quick sip of tea. Right. My second one. Alright, it's going to be no surprise to anybody. The Months of Shame. And yes, I'm a Grey Knight fan. Go sue me. It's fine. But the Months of Shame to me are essentially Macca's Last Argument light. The Diet Pepsi, Pepsi Max version of Macca's Last Argument. Because power levels during the Months of Shame, for those of you who don't know what it is, after the war on Armageddon, I think it's the third war on Armageddon, the Space Wolves and Grey Knights are hanging around, generally looking at the vestiges of what has happened on Armageddon. So loads of Khornate demons have come in, Angron's been there, everyone's been exposed to demons, oh my god, it's terrible. And the Grey Knights say, right, and the Inquisition, they say, right, we're going to have to put all the normal humans in extermination camps, where they'll be worked to death and sterilised, and all of the Marines need to be mind-wiped, and then we can all leave. Space Wolves don't like this, and so all hell breaks loose when the Space Wolves try to save the people of the world, and the Inquisition intervene, and they end up fighting a couple of wars that are named the Months of Shame. Now, the Space Wolves are very much written as the good guys of this conflict, and they're very much written as more powerful than both the Inquisition and the Grey Knights. Space Wolf characters kill multiple Grey Knight characters, they kill multiple Inquisitors, and after all that, nothing happens. They get away with it, essentially. It's all called off, everyone shakes hands and goes their own way, sort of a thing. Begrudgingly, they don't like each other still, but they go their own way. And non-decisive wars in 40k should die a fucking death. They shouldn't be here anymore. It annoys the hell out of me. Because once you go to the war with the Inquisition, it's one of the key tenets of the entire setting. The Inquisition, don't touch them. If you do, you're dead. Doesn't matter if you're a Space Marine chapter. It wouldn't matter if you're a Space Marine Legion. Like, the Inquisition could take down a Legion. A small one. Like the Alpha Legion, something that size. the Inquisition could take that down. Like they've got enough resources, enough exterminators behind them, you know, enough bureaucracy behind them that they can move mountains to annihilate you if they wanted to, right? Look at the Celestial Lions, by the way. A Space Marine chapter with a similar numbers to the Space Wolves, you know what I mean? Annihilated. They only went against the Inquisition once, and it was a very mild transgression. And the Inquisition kept assassinating them and manipulating them and just killing them all until they were all basically gone, right? Until the Primaris Marines came along. What I don't like about the Months of Shame, beyond being a Grey Knight fan and seeing, like, you know, my faction bent over a barrel like he's in fucking Pulp Fiction, taking one up the arse, right? Apart from that, it's the very fact that it just doesn't fit. Power levels in 40k should be a thing. You should not be able to go against the Inquisition, just as you should not be able to make Primaris Marines off the drop of a hat. It just doesn't make any sense. And if you throw out all of those things, where are the stakes? There are no stakes anymore, right? If one Marine can kill a Grey Knight Grandmaster, what's special about Grey Knights then? They've done this for decades as well. They've tried to make Grey Knights not special. It's really weird. Like, they've got the real bee in their bonnet for Grey Knights. I don't know what it is. But they've tried to make them less special with every edition. And with every bit of lore that comes out about them, they take away a bit of their shine. Because they just, I don't know what it is. And Space Wolves are given more and more and more and more as the years go on. Again, no idea what that is either. Mainly because they're very popular, I don't know. But, you know, you can't fight the Inquisition because they are beyond the power of a single Space Marine chapter. The second a Space Wolf raises his hands to an Imperial Inquisitor, the entire chapter should be dead. You know? Or at least excommunicate traitoris. At least. That's it. They're gone. Right? In full view of everybody, they kill an Inquisitor. In full view of everybody. Not a random one of the main Inquisitors of the entire force. You're dead, son. Like, you can't do that. Like, that is something you can't do in the lore, and it's something that I really, really, really hate of the Months of Shame. And I would fix it by doing something very, very, very simple. It doesn't happen. The Space Wolves leave, right, because their job is done. The Inquisition do what they want with Armageddon, and then Space Wolves swear revenge on the Inquisition. That's it. That's it. That's all that happens. Maybe do one honor duel between Logan Grimnar and a Grey Knight Grandmaster if you really want to, and have Logan Grimnar kill a Grey Knight Grandmaster. Not got a problem with that. If it's an honor duel, no problem, right? But that's it. Going as far as they went, basically, takes all of the shine from the Inquisition, from the Grey Knights, just to build up the Space Wolves for what they are, and I don't get it. What do you reckon? Is it just me grumbling, like going mental, or is this something that you actually kind of get?
No, I get it. It's, you know, again, if there's consequences in this universe, and if you have a situation where the Grey Knights and the Inquisition in particular just gets walked over like that, then what is the consequence? Nothing, because they're a favoured chapter, so you just get away with it. Oh, okay, that's engaging storytelling right there. No, I definitely agree with you.
Awesome. I mean, I was hoping that the Horus traitor one I could sort of give or take, but the Month of Shame, I was like, no, I will die on this hill. I was ready to die on that one. I was like, no. I will take a critique of every point but this one. Like, screw the Space Wars, man. I don't even, you know, I honestly, if there's one video I can do about lore where I don't rant about Space Wolves, I would love to, because I think Space Wolves are cool. That's one thing and I don't really, you know, people don't really give me any, not credit for, but like, they seem to think I really hate them. Mainly because I don't like the lore. But I think Space Wolves are the thing, are cool. I think Space Wolves and the Horus Heresy are cool. But there's a reason why you don't really see very many Space Wolf armies in Horus Heresy. At least I don't. Do you?
I see a few, but I mean, I'm exposed to so many of those armies, you know, through my local community, as it were. And even then, like, most Heresy players are cognizant enough, most, not all, to admit that Russ is an idiot, so We got that going for us.
Yeah. Well, you can admit he's an idiot without saying he's a bad character. You know, he is a moron, but that's Russ.
Yeah, I call him Leroy Russ because that's what he is, you know.
Basically.
He doesn't seem to think and just acts, and his whole legion does, and yet they never get a cup-uppance for it. That's what frustrates me.
Yes, I mean going into the wider Space Wolves, you know, Prospero. That's something that nearly made the list. The Space Wolves just going, oh yeah, no problem, Horus. We'll go kill these guys for you. What an entire legion? Are you kidding me? You know, then them getting everything handed to them on silver platter. It does irk me. I just don't understand why they get so much love from the. There's got to be somebody in the studio. I have a friend called Alan who actually works in the studio. And they're just writing 40k lore, best job in the world, and he basically is like, yeah, there are people who like certain armies, and I'm not going to tell you whether one of them Space Wolves, but you know, yeah, you know, there are certain armies in there that get a lot of love. Ultramarines is one of them as well. Nearly everybody in the studio who has a successor chapter, they're Ultramarine successors. You know, it's just crazy how they go about it. Anyway, I'll get into Alan in a minute because he helped me with my third one. But what is your second one, Mako? What is your second point?
My second is demon primarchs and their criminal chronic misuse.
Ooh.
So primarchs, you know, can conquer, you know, huge swaths of the galaxy on their own. But demon primarchs, instead of being amplified by chaos, they just seem to lose repeatedly to loyalist primarchs. And I think the reason for this is because of the fact that they are demons. You can kill them and banish them, and it's okay because you're not modifying the setting, because they just respawn. So because of this, like the Avatar of Cain for so many years, or the Swarm Lord, because it can also be respawned, and avatars, because they're not named, they're just, you know, another one from some craftworld you never heard of just gets throttled to death by a space marine because it's Tuesday. Well, it's the same thing with demon primarchs. They are wheeled out just to exist, so you can be told how strong they are, so that whoever the hero is this week is able to kill them and prove that they are the hero of the week. And this is a problem on many, many levels. Not least of which because, you know, the Imperium is not full of heroes. At least not heroes you should look up to. The Imperium is full of very morally dubious characters. And I feel like that is a huge letdown because it takes all of the, you know, it's a card you can only play once sort of thing. When you've done it with, like, Magnus has been beaten, Mortarian's been beaten, Angron's been beaten, it just, the wind is totally taken out of the sails. And worse is two of those guys were, you know, they were beaten down by Gilliman, of all people, who in no way, shape or form should ever have been able to contend with either of them, because no matter what people say, Gilliman is a rather underwhelming Primarch, you know, when it comes to combat. That is not his forte. It's a fundamental misunderstanding of the character. Gilliman is a strategist. He is a tactician too. You know, he is not a mano-a-mano fighter. Different Primarchs are bred for different purposes. You know, we spoke off the air the other week because it tied into, like, the Lion issue, and it's like the Lion is, you know, he's sort of the balanced, if he was the Emperor himself, basically a more pure clone of the Emperor without changing it at all. And that was his purpose, you know. Angron is just this berserk, crazed combat monster, you know. But for some reason, Gilliman, they feel the need to just involve him in these constant punching matches. Now the Lion is being brought back just to deal with Angron, and yeah, it's just, to me, it's just awful. So what should have been done, and this ties into the resurrection of the Primarchs, is someone like the Lion, you have a perfect opportunity to bring him back without having to face Angron or be involved in any of that. And it should have been that when Vashtor broke into the rock and was breaking into all the different vaults on the rock, you know, we joked about this, it should have been that moment where he opens basically the wrong door and he fucks around and finds out very quickly, because what's that meme of the Undertaker, like, standing behind, you know, another wrestler? It's like that. The Lion just standing behind Vashtor would have been hilarious. and just kills him off, problem solved. And someone like Vashtor is a better demon entity or demonic entity to use as a way of saying, like, here is a big bad who you know is dangerous, and watch the lion take him down a peg. That's the sort of situation you use. If you're going to bring back demon primarchs, I feel like you almost need to have them take and hold large sectors of the galaxy, and the Imperium just has no response to it. They just have to cordon it off and just say, well, it's
Yeah,
fucked.
that's gone.
Yeah, that's gone. Let's just go home, worry about it another day.
I mean,
Instead, what happens is, they say that they hold sectors of the galaxy, but everything we see says the opposite. So there's a lot of overlap between fixing it and just the more you try and fix it and delve into it, the more problems come out of it, unfortunately.
So I think one thing that really is a shame is that the GW don't seem to use the very demon nature of demon primarchs as part of their characterization. So how cool would it be in your idea, Maka, if you had Angron around, but he can't hold sections of the galaxy because he's too volatile. So he breaks into the mortal realm, annihilates a load of things, and then just burns out and goes back into the warp again. Do you know what I mean? That would be a much cooler demon primarch than what we currently have of him leading fleets. What the fuck's he doing leading fleets? Like, it just... What? Like, his brain is soup. We've been told that in Horus Heresy novels. It's literally hate soup. That's what's in his head. How is he doing all these tactics and things? I completely agree with what you're saying. I think it's the thing is, and something that I thought of when you first started making your point there was that people say to me all the time, well, 40k isn't a setting that needs to stay static anymore. It can move on. No, you're wrong. It can't. And the Demon Primarchs are a full example of that. They literally can't move on anymore because that's why they keep going back to the well with the Demon Primarchs and saying, okay, we can kill this Demon Primarch, he just comes back. Why? Because he doesn't affect the setting overall. That's why. That's why they keep going back to Avatars of Cain. That's why they keep going back to Demon Primarchs, because killing them doesn't change the setting. It doesn't move the setting forwards. It keeps things nice and static. So you can come back and go back to the well again and again and again. But I completely agree. In a universe with choice and consequence and with like actual events happening that can actually change the look of the galaxy, Demon Primarch should be, a massive once per every couple of editions of the game event, and the entire narrative event of say 10th edition or 9th edition should be like Mortarion coming back, and if Mortarion's coming back, he's the centerpiece of this entire thing, and he claps cheeks. You know what I mean? Like, he literally is unkillable. It's beyond everybody to fight him, even Gilliman. Do you know what I mean? And their whole...
Yeah, definitely.
The Imperium's fighting a losing retreat of trying to get away. They're not trying to beat him. They're trying to evacuate. They're trying to get everyone out. Like, maybe half of McCrag just goes. Maybe the entire thing, or maybe Ultramar, the entire thing, just half of it just goes. It's now a plague realm of just Mortarion's plaything. But they'll never do that because the setting has to stay static. It can't move on. It moved on once. Because that's the only reason why it moved on, because they needed Primaris Marines. That's it. It moved on once. People can't stop telling me in comment sections and in message board and Discord, stop telling me 40k moves on. It doesn't. It moved on once. Because they needed to bring out Primaris Marines, and they needed to bring back some Primarchs. That's it. That's it. And that's it, yeah.
It's one of those like sad realities, in that there's so much that can be done here, and it's just like you pick the laziest possible implementation, and I feel like they could do so much better than that.
Like I had this when we came up with that lion returning meme the other day, I just had this like image of Queen's song from Highlander, "Gimme the Prize," playing, and Vashtor just there, and like the riff kicks in, and then just Lion just stands up behind him, sort of a thing. So you picked the wrong door, fool! It's like kind of thing. It's just like there's so many cool little meanie moments that you could do. And again, as you just said, why can't we have more demonic entities? Why can't Chaos get some love? aside from, it's kind of like, wrestling fans will know this. I always do wrestling analogies. Do you guys remember the Invasion back in the day when WWF bought WCW, and we all thought, oh my god, all the best wrestlers in the world are going to be here. It's going to be amazing, all in the same company, all fighting each other. And then, WCW's wrestlers never turned up. Most of them never turned. All the guys on big deals were on guaranteed contracts, and they just stayed at home basically, and read out those contracts. And so what that had to be done was, a lot of the WWF's people were turned traitor, quote unquote, and so they fought themselves. So they basically led all of these WCW jobbers against the big boys and it just didn't work. That's exactly what we're having here. Instead of Chaos having its own champions and its own thing, instead we've got traitor Imperials fighting Imperials. And it just doesn't seem. Vashtor's one of those characters that really, really, really could hold water like that and actually carry a bit of the burden of holding up this entire, antagonist faction. Do you have any more ideas of like what kind of demons you'd like to see come back, or is it more like, I just want more demons, I want more bad guys?
Definitely more demons, but I think, a fundamental, I say it a lot, but a fundamental problem is you take a range and you expand it so much over the years, and I've sort of spoken about, it's more of a gameplay problem, but, they splitting off demons from Chaos Space Marines / Chaos Warriors has always been a huge mistake, because, all the cool toys that the Imperium had, it was okay for them to have them because Chaos had demons. So it was like, oh, you lose, land speeders, you lose whirlwinds, that sort of thing. But hey, you gain like Great Unclean Ones, you gain Keeper of Secrets, and there was a trade-off there. And that's all good and well, but then when they went off to separate books, then they're like, well, you can play Demons of One God, and there's only like 4 units in the entry, so it's been a long time. It's taken over a decade since they made those changes. Because that happened in sort of 5th edition Warhammer 40,000 and end of 7th edition Warhammer Fantasy. So probably closer to 15 years now. If not, 15 years it'd have to be. So since they did that change, it's taken them this long to be sort of getting it to where it's like, okay, Slaanesh is its own playable faction, for Age of Sigmar, and so is Tzeentch, and so is Khorne, so is Nurgle. It's taken all this time, and because of that, like we've got Be'lakor, which is a start, but they really haven't fully fleshed out these factions to where they need to be. And so I think that would be one of the things I would look at doing, is trying to, flesh out all of these factions with, they've got like a major character, you've got like your Nakaris, you've got your Masks, you've got your Kairos Fateweaver, you've got your Changelings. But they need more middle ground heroes between the two, especially Demon Princes. I think Demon Princes make a great named character, or you introduce a second mortal follower. So I prefer Demon Princes sheerly for the fact that they are immortal. Whereas if you introduce another like Ahriman Light, it's exactly that. It's Ahriman Light, and when he dies, he dies. So I think Demon Princes would be the better way to go about it. But if you've got any ideas, or you think I'm definitely up the wrong path, please let me know now.
One thing you said there, please guys, if you've not seen the model yet, go and Google it. Look at that Be'lakor model and tell me that shouldn't be the main bad guy of Chaos. That's the guy, right there. That's the guy. Like that is the best model for me in pose, in sweeping gestures, in even down to his clawed feet. Everything about that model is perfect. Literally, that's the dude. Alright? If you want Chaos bad guys, that's the guy. That's who we should be following. Be'lakor should be having this huge narrative about him, about how he's trying to break free of the will of the gods. Because that's Chaos in and of itself, isn't it? Chaos is weirdly organised. I don't like it. Like everyone's got their own armies and everyone's got their own little sections of Chaos. No. Be'lakor should be the most powerful Chaos champion because he can't be tamed by any of them because he's so chaotic. He goes against them. He's there to, shall we say, I would have him mantle Malal. You're the lost Chaos God. I would have him mantle him. Like, he mantles him. So he essentially becomes this avatar of true chaos, you know? And he thinks all of the other chaos gods, they're not worthy of service because they're not chaotic. They're all very organized, got their own empires and the warp and all this other stuff. You know, he basically says, these guys are all fucking dweebs, right? I'm the guy. You want chaos, I'm him, you know? And that's what I would do with Bael'Kor. I think he could make an absolutely sensational villain for the guys who don't want to play Space Marines. Maybe there are lots of Chaos players out there who are just like, my demons fucking suck. Like, why are these, like, big bad guys of the entire setting not that great? Like, they're just fodder for Space Marines. I think introducing somebody like a Bael'Kor to really ramp it up, the power of demonhood, would be a really good thing to do. And, you know, take all the demon primarchs and make them a special thing. Make them a thing that even Bael'Kor's like, yeah, I'm not fucking around with that. No. You know what I mean? Like, I could beat that. I could beat one of them, but if two of them came back at the same time, I couldn't do that. You know? Have Bael'Kor be that main bad guy and treat the primarchs, demon primarchs, as a special treat. You know, a special hors d'oeuvre you get, you know, with every few editions of 40k, one of them returns, comes back and kicks ass and disappears again. Or kicks ass and takes and holds a sector of the galaxy, depending on what kind of a demon primarch they are. One thing that they do fall down in is that GW seem to think that every demon primarch is the same in mentality. You know, Angron doesn't want an empire, dude. He doesn't care. Like, if you've read any Horus Heresy books, you know that guy, he's not an empire builder, you know? He's not Gilliman. He's just he wants to go in there, clap some cheeks and disappear again. Mortarion, maybe, you know, empire builder. Magnus, maybe, empire builder. Maybe. Fulgrim and Angron, though? No. Absolutely not. They should be there for the moment. They should come in, wreck face, you know, want pleasure or pain or whatever it is they want, and then they should leave. So I agree. They shouldn't be a part of the setting day to day. They should be a special thing, you know? Again, I say it all the time. I will do a video on it eventually. Wrestling and 40k are the same thing. Because the same problems come up in both things. Okay? If you've got a very special wrestler, if you've got a very special attraction, if they come out every Monday night for the show, they're not special anymore. You know? That's why they use sparingly. That's why they're not on every single show. Because when they are advertised, people tune the fuck in. And they watch. They want to see who Brock Lesnar's going to cave the face in of next, right? They want to see when he's going to turn up. If he was on every single show ever, he becomes less special. He doesn't get that same reaction as he did the first few times he comes out. It's a law of diminishing returns. And if you keep doing that with Angron, Mortarion, you know, Fulgrim, whatever, you keep bringing them back every single time we need a new bad guy for Gilliman to punch in the face, they become less special. It's happened to Magnus. Magnus is done. I don't know how you feel about Magnus, but to me, he's done. As a bad guy,
well,
he's done.
As a player of like Thousand Suns for close on, you know, 30 years, yeah, I have, you know, what's that, like Padme, you're breaking my heart, or like they've completely screwed the pooch, because there's nothing intimidating about a Primarch who has now had extra Primarchs beat him to death. He's now been beaten by Gilman, Vulcan, and Lehman Russ. So there is zero anything left to
and in none of those
He's
duels was it even close, by the way. It wasn't even close.
And like that Vulcan one in particular annoys me. Just a side tangent. Sorry, viewers. Like, he doesn't use psychic powers. Like, hey, look, I can just hold you in place, like with telekinesis, and what are you going to do about it? You know, it's just, you're in my way and you're stopping me from getting, you know, to the Golden Throne or whatever. Cool, I'll just throw you 4 miles into the distance.
I'll just put you in the warp for a while.
When you can.
Off you go.
Yeah.
You know,
it's like, if you're going to invent psychic powers for them, let them do something creative with them. And they just don't. They just can't help themselves.
That's like your month of shame, isn't it? Like the Vulcan fight, because it was needless. They added it.
Yeah.
It did
not help. didn't make a stronger narrative, and I think a lot of these lore problems that we discuss come down to that very fact that they mess with the lore, but they don't mess with it in a way that it really justifies. Like, oh, if they didn't write this lore, the game would suck. It's like, no, if they didn't write this lore, things would be more consistent, and that's a problem.
I completely get where you're coming from with Magnus. That's why I brought him up, because I knew one, I knew would set you off, and number two, he's literally the one who is. I'm gonna be honest with you. No one gives a shit about Magnus anymore, and that's a crime in itself. But I can't blame them. I can't blame people for thinking Magnus is fucking lame, because he's written that way. Like, what are you supposed to do? Like, he's literally written that way. He's the bitch. Like, he's come back a few times. This is a guy who can't beat an unmodified Guilliman. Guilliman's not even a combat Primarch. What are you talking about? At least Vulcan, you can say, well, he's perpetual, he recovers very quickly, blah, blah. But the thing is, though, you represent Magnus as somebody who can just cancel out, perpetual powers. He's that powerful. You can just go, nah, you're not perpetual anymore, sorry. It's gonna kill you now. I just don't understand. There were ways to do Magnus, and again, we're going to open up a big can of worms here, so we'll get into that another time. But my God, I mean, if you want an example of what Maka means by Demon Primarchs aren't special, if you use them all the time, look at my boy Magnus. Look what they did to him. Like, he's literally just this battered housewife in the fetal position of the kitchen that is Warhammer 40,000. He's literally just there hoping we stop hitting him. It just, well, that's going to trigger a few people, but it's true. It's just true. The poor guy, he's done as a character. That's why I use that phrase. He's done. He's cooked. Like, there's nothing more you can get out of Magnus. He couldn't even, he got his revenge on Feminist. Well, did he? Did he really? I mean, it's still there.
Immediately solved by the primaris.
Yeah. Yeah.
They said, oh, it's Fenris can't recruit now because he's like polluted all that, and it's like, okay, he's Zinch related or affiliated. Like, yes, he should be having devious, sneaky, convoluted plans, but to just instantly watch it get undone, it's just, oh, I guess that's that. Here goes that plot thread. Wouldn't want to imperil the Space Wolves, would we now?
No, well, yeah, well, we've been on that horse, haven't we? I mean, the gift that keeps on giving. Yeah, Space Wolf fans, we are sorry, but it's one of those things where when people say to me, "Oh, Grey Knights, oh yeah, Matt Ward, all the time," and I'm like, hang on, you collect Space Wolves, motherfucker? Like, you get everything handed to you all the time, and we got one codex where we had some bonkers stories in there that were very Grey Knights. They were all bonkers stories, but it's a very Grey Knight thing to do. Yes, we'll murder all these Sisters of Battle and cover our armor in their blood. Yeah, it's bonkers. Welcome to 40k. That's what we do, and we didn't affect the entire setting. We didn't break the setting's rules by doing it. Space Wolves get, again, bend over backwards. The setting kills itself all the time to accommodate these fucking Viking assholes, and I can't do with them anymore. Anyway, I'll do my third one, because this is going to be quite controversial, I think. Alright. Dark Angels fans, look away. The Lion versus Luther. I hate it. I hate it. I really, really, really hate it. Something's always felt off to me about the Lion taking on Luther and losing. Something's always felt a bit weird, because Luther isn't even a Space Marine, really. He's somebody who's kind of like Cor Phaeron, right? He's an older guy who's uplifted to be kind of near a Space Marine, but not quite. So how the fuck is Luther beating him, even if all the Chaos Gods are pumping one up his ass? How is he beating the Lion? He doesn't, in my opinion. But it's always really made me feel uncomfortable. And the main reason for that is, it's basically a discount Siege of Terror. We've just had the Siege of Terror, and then the Lion goes home to Caliban, and another Siege of Terror happens. Literally, right? The traitors against loyalists, fighting over a world, and the Chaos Gods get really annoyed, and they open up a a big warp rift and they tear apart the Caliban. Okay, why? Why would they give a shit about one legion after all the things that have just happened? Why would they give did they really think that Luther was going to be another Horus or something? Why would it always felt really lazy to me to have another Siege of Terror happen just after the Siege of Terror. It's a big thing of after the Lord Mayor's show, right? Why are we doing this again? Only for me to talk to a friend of mine called Alan in our WhatsApp group, my WhatsApp group, and generally he's talking about lore. And Alan actually works for the GW studio, and he's worked there for quite a number of years now. And he said something to me that was very, very, very prescient, and I thought that was really interesting. And that's the fact that, well, the writers couldn't figure out back in the day something to do with Lionel Johnson after the Siege of Terror. They couldn't figure out what to do with him. They knew that they needed to have all of these, esoteric things going on with the Dark Angels, and so they made half the Dark Angels chapter turn traitor, and all that sort of stuff happens. But his duel with Luther was never meant to be canon, long term. It was always meant to be a stopgap, to be retconned later by new novels, to be something else. So the story was always supposed to be, Lion versus Luther. But that's not really what happened. Let us show you what really happened, and that something more interesting, lore-wise, takes its place. Because they agree that all that the Lion versus Luther is a rehash of the Siege of Terror, but with less cool toys, right? It was never meant to stick, and it did, because too much time passed in between the making of that decision and the modern day, essentially. So now it's lore, now it's actual canon, that the only thing that happens with the Dark Angels is we get this discount Siege of Terror, which isn't very interesting. But it was never meant to be that way, and I found that really, really, really interesting, and it was kind of like somebody popped my back in a very, really satisfying way. It was like, oh, okay, well, at least now I know that's what thought that was. Before I go into how I'd fix it, do you agree? Because I know it's a weird one. This is a very personal thing to me, but just from a writer's perspective, I'm like, why did you do that? It just doesn't make sense to me.
I don't think he should be able to beat the Lion. That I admit that one has sat poorly with me for a long time, and I've just tried to rationalize it in my brain. Because it plays out kind of like the Horus fight for the Emperor, like, but I loved him once type thing.
Literally, yeah.
Yeah, how can I, kill this guy? And I try to rationalize it as well. The Lion's holding back, and that's all I've got, I'm afraid. Because, it's like cope, premium, weapons grade cope.
I mean, that's the problem, isn't it? Like it literally, even you saying that though, Lion's holding back. Well, it just feeds into my other point. So it's just the Siege of Terror then. It's literally just the Siege of Terror redone again with less cool characters. Great. We've got this huge setup. You can't have Horus versus the Emperor and then do the same thing with lesser people 10 minutes later on a world we don't care about. It doesn't make sense. From a writer, you don't... It's like, imagine if the Scouring of the Shire, at the end of Lord of the Rings. That's something I've never really liked either. I never really liked Sharky, Saruman. I never really liked all that stuff. I like the way they did it in the movies a lot better because it's a lot more tragic. They got a lot more tragedy out of, we're changed now. We're not real. We're not, we're not innocent hobbits anymore. And never really liked the Scouring in the Shower. It was never really my thing. And I think this is the same thing. Once Sauron's defeated, that's the end of the story. Okay, we should be in the epilogue now. We should be having a calming down of action now. It's very jarring to go and have this thing at the end of your book, which just, I get real life doesn't follow doesn't follow like a movie script, but if you're writing a story, it should. You know what I mean? That there shouldn't be this jarring thing right at the end. I've never really understood it, but the way I would fix it, right, is, and I think I've said this before on one of my lore fixing videos, is all the way back to the start. Okay, There are two sets of twins in the primarchs. There's Alpharius and Omegon, and there's the Lion and Luther. They are twins, and they come to Caliban together. And they're split apart when they're younger. Luther is a amazing psyker, like really powerful. Essentially, Magnus, he's the backup to Magnus, He was the Emperor's plan to, like, okay, if Magnus doesn't work out, this guy can sit on the Golden Throne, it's all fine. Or they can swap each other out, so when one of them needs a break, the other one can get on the throne, everything's fine. So Luther's that kind of a psyker, and he's also a really good warrior. So he's a top-tier Primarch, essentially. And he's starting to make his own empire on Caliban. He's putting it all together, but Caliban's so vast and so demonic in terms of its monsters and shit that he can only really take over half the world, right? His empire then finds the Lion. That's one thing that I wanted to... So it kind of follows the same track now. So his empire finds the Lion, and Luther sort of takes on a big brother persuasion to the Lion. He sort of brings him up and becomes his champion, And eventually, when the Emperor comes down, he comes down, recognises what's going on, and he's like, right, okay, one of you needs to stay here to obviously man Caliban, and one of you needs to come with me. And he chooses the Lion because he's more of a warrior. Luther's more of a statesman. The Lion's more of a warrior. So he says to Luther, build your own little empire here like Ultramar. That's your remit, right? I'm taking the Lion with me. He's going to go on the Great Crusade. That's when the resentment starts, because Luther's been left behind. And he gets more and more and more angry as time goes on. Chaos starts whispering in his brain. And we essentially have the Siege of Terror thing kind of happens, but instead of it being like a Siege of Terror moment, I would have them maybe fight a huge war over this sector of Caliban. Like, the actual sector is, the Legion tears itself apart during the Horus Heresy. It doesn't happen after the Horus Heresy. The reason why the Lion doesn't make it to Terra is because Luther is pushing his shit in, is annihilating him in a war over Caliban and the wider empire that Luther built. And then the final climactic battle, they basically kill each other, right? Luther's full up with chaos, but the Lion's so powerful he's able to, strike him down. They kill each other, but not really. They're both imprisoned in the rock, and the Luther letting go of all of his power annihilates Caliban, essentially rips it off into the warp, and off we go. And that's how I would do it. That's how I would make sure that the Lion and Luther fight is cool. And we've got another Primarch. Hooray! Right? We've got another Primarch that we can play with. That's what I would do. What do you reckon? Is it bonkers, or do you reckon it kind of works?
It's probably not for me. The whole twins thing. I hate the original set of twins, though, is part of this problem.
Yeah.
The whole Alpharis thing does not work for me at all. But it's hard, because where do you go with trying to, like, I get where you're coming from. It is a hard one to fix.
Yeah.
Because the issues to that story, I don't think I have anything super constructive to offer here, I'm afraid.
I think with I think what I think I've done is I've kind of made like the best of a bad situation. That's the only way I can see to paint. That's the only way I can see to write something that's better than what we got. But it's not much better than what we got. Do you know what I mean? Like it just fits better in. Oh, I get the power levels now. I get why Luther beats the Lion now. Okay, cool. I understand that. Right? I get why Luther turns traitor now. Okay, cool. I understand that. I get why the Chaos Gods gave a shit about him in the first place. Because why... Alright. Why is Luther so popular with the Chaos Gods when people like Cawl the Betrayer and Typhus are much more powerful than Luther? I think we can say that, right? Much more. And only one Chaos God is interested in them. Why? It just doesn't make sense. When you think about it, Luther doesn't make sense. Maybe he was never meant to make sense because they got something planned for him down the road. But I don't think so. I just think it's something they're going to leave as it is. He's out there somewhere. And it's one of those things where moving the setting forwards, it's one of those things where I know they're not going to do that. Which is why I know the setting's not really going to move forward. The minute you tell us what Luther is, if you don't retcon it for him to be more powerful than the Lion, or as powerful as the Lion, it makes no fucking sense. Why is this random Marine, who's not even a Marine, kicking the Lion's ass? Even with the United Chaos Gods behind him. Why are the Chaos Gods even bothered about this Luther guy, right? Well, if he's a Primarch who can sit on the Golden Throne and actually bring the Emperor's plans to fruition, that's a very good reason for them to be interested in him. It's a very good reason for him to kick the Lion's ass, is because he's technically his father figure, you know? And one thing GW loves in 40k is telling us stories about sons and fathers all the time. All the Space Marines have daddy issues. Right? It just is what it is. And I think that it just... If we're going to do it in a 40k way, I think that works. I'm not saying it's a great piece of lore. I'm just saying I can see how it fits. Do you know what I mean? I can see how the Luther beats the Lion now. I can see why the Dark Angels are ashamed of themselves now. I can see why having them both locked away in the rock is a big secret now. It all kind of clicks into place. And, you know, even the Chaos Gods wanting Luther on their side works out now. You know, maybe they go to Luther because they can't get into Magnus. Magnus only goes over to Chaos through circumstance. He doesn't want to. Maybe Luther actually does want to. Maybe he's more receptive to their whispers than Magnus is. You know, maybe you can do something else.
I think maybe if Luther found like some architect, something to, you know, some piece of equipment that would really like be a game changer, like fill the sort of skill gap between them, as it were. You know, but he got some paid DLC.
Yeah.
To help him get a leg up against the Lion. If they did something like that, I think that could work without having to modify Luther too much. You know, beyond just psychic chicanery. I don't know. It's a tough one because it is a problem that he beats the Lion.
It's a huge issue. Like I don't know how we do this, not making him a Primarch. You know, to me, in my Marines shouldn't beat Primarchs, right? Normal Marines shouldn't beat Grey Knights. Grey Knights shouldn't beat Custodes, and Custodes shouldn't beat Primarchs. That's the law of the jungle for me, right? That's in a descending order. That's the law of the jungle, and to have Luther beat one of the combat Primarchs, by the way, the Lion. This isn't some fucking Lorgar he's beating up. This is the Lion, right? The guy, the duelist, the guy even Jagatai Khan didn't know he could beat. Yeah, the Khan's like, I don't know if I could take that guy, right? That guy, and some Marine with, you know, a chaos dildo squarely up his ass beats him. Nah, not for me. You know, I don't get how we reconcile those two things without making him Primarch. You know, and again, I have a distaste for my own lore here. I don't really like it, but I think it shows you just how shit the lore is in this part of the galaxy, where even the shitty thing I came up with, I think it's infinitely better than what we got. You know, but anyway, that's my third one. So regale me with your third lore grumble. I'm very interested to see what you come up with.
Well, this is the thing. I have a hard time here because I have strong issues with bringing back the way they brought back Primarchs as a whole. You know, I sort of mentioned what I would do with the Lion before. And I want to talk about that, but I also feel like I need to give the Xenos some love. So I'm in a bit of a precarious situation here because, like, I'm very Marine centric. You know, that's sort of my, you know, my biggest passion, because I've been collecting Marines probably longer than anything else in a way. But I think so much of the universe of 40k is tied in with the Imperial faction. that I would like to say that making the Imperium good guys is a problem. I think that's where I'll land on this, because I don't think I've forgotten about you, Xenos players. I really, really haven't. But the Imperium shouldn't be good guys. But because the company has decided to make Space Marines traditional hero archetypes, fighting for the good of the world, as it were, it means that everyone else has become their punching bag by default. And if you're going against Marines, you cannot have a win. And I think that is kind of miserable. So I think that would be a big thing that has to be changed in the war, is just going back to that older time of, the Marines, morally very, very ambiguous.
Angels of
that's
Death.
The only way to really, it's the only way to tackle it. Because otherwise, every Xenos is their punching bag. Look, Marines shouldn't be getting quote unquote easy wins against Necrons. Just the technological gap is so great there. Like, you can have all the willpower and the spirit you want, right? And I hate to bring it up, but think of like a real world situation. All those blokes charging on the Western Front in 1914 had a lot of bloody heroism too. Didn't matter. Once the machine guns start firing, the heroism it's unfortunately it's rendered moot. It should be the same thing with the Imperium versus Xenos factions. Like, you can have heroism, but we should never lose sight of the cause. Like, why are the Marines in the fight in the first place? And that's something that's great about Horus Heresy lore, and I wish was brought into the 40k lore. So this is kind of my fix here, is that Marines should be treated as like, in any story, it should be questioning, why am I here? Why am I fighting? Because you can say, oh, well, they just believe in total subservience and service. Like, yeah, that's great, but that's not good enough for me. And they should be being used to as like a foil, and a way to actually involve the Xenos with the Imperium and give the Marines more doubts. So that's sort of my fix here, is I would like to see them, if you're going to try and cast them as good guys, at least have other factions trying to give them conflicting viewpoints more often and more openly, and not to just mercilessly crush factions, especially the Eldar. I feel like the Craftworld Eldar, and to a sort of similar extent the Tau, and the Enid faction of the Eldar should be being used in that way to sort of, act as a mirror, a moral mirror to the Marines and their activities, where maybe even if the Marines do end the book as the victors, you sort of come away, with a sort of bad feeling in your gut, like, oh, I don't know how I feel about that. Maybe they shouldn't have deserved that win.
That's a good point. I kind of like the...
What would you...
No, I think you hit on a few very good points there. I like... if you're going to make them the Angels of Death, okay, let's do it. Maybe telling a book from the point of view of a low-level Tau commander, seeing these guys turn up from the Death Watch, do you know what I mean? And seeing, like, his peaceful society just rendered mute against these absolute barbarians who are just there to kill you. They're not there to win a battle. I think that's the horror of 40k that we don't really investigate a lot, because it's very dark. And when the Marines turn up, especially Death Watch against Xenos or something, they're not there to win. They're there to exterminate you. They're like pest control. They're not here to take an objective from you. They're literally here to, render your entire civilization moot and gone, and wipe it clean. And I do think there is a bit of a tonal whiplash when 40k tries to paint people like that as the good guys. But what I will always also say is, as a pushback against what you said, in the interest of balance on the point, was I agree that the Necrons and Eldar and certain factions of Xenos should be way beyond the Imperial power to deal with. The issue therein is that we're selling models. How do we reconcile... Put it this way, right? The Astral Knights. Okay. I don't like that story, because a single chapter of Astral Knights, ends up taking down a world engine, which is essentially this amazing piece of Dark Age technology that the Necrons made, and they've got a full tomb world on there, and they're unbeatable, and the Marines fight their way in, overload the reactors, and they destroy their entire chapter, yes, but they do win. Like, they get rid of the Xenos threat. Now, to me, that's not an even exchange. Not that it needs to be, of course, but a victory like that should be 1 in a million. But we're told Marines do this on a Saturday, right? This is, it's Tuesday now. We go and do these acts of heroism. That's what we do. So I agree that Xenos races, as certain factions of them anyway, should be way beyond. Like, when the Necrons turn up, it should be, oh shit, Like, let's say the Orcs are fighting Marines on a world somewhere, and the Necrons come out of the ground. Because there's tombs down there. Everybody should need to fuck off. Right? It shouldn't be a 3-way war now. It should be like, oh no, the Necrons are here. We all need to leave, because we're going to get killed. Now, we all need to go. And there should be, again, power levels and consequences for actions. But the issue there is that if the Necrons are so much better than Marines in the lore, then why are Marines killing lots of Necrons on the tabletop and getting away with things that they don't in the lore? Do you know what I mean? Don't get me wrong, I don't think Games Workshop particularly care about the lore in terms of the game, but I do. So how do you reconcile those things? Would you simply make the Necrons more powerful on tabletop? Or would you just say, hey, that's the way the cookie crumbles, The Necrons are very expensive points-wise, and they absolutely annihilate you if you go up against them. What would you do with them? How would you reconcile your more powerful Xenos factions with the way the game's actually meant to be balanced?
So I would say in that regard, think of a good example of this is the Imperial Guard. There's no planet where a guardsman should be able to kill a Marine.
No.
No way should that be possible in the game. But it is. So it's a similar sort of situation to that in my mind. What way you should be treating it is that the Necrons, if we can get away with it with the Guard, we can get away with it with Necrons, is basically what I'm getting at here. So, why would we need to worry in the first place? I think the models will sell just fine and dandy without it. It won't be an issue.
Yeah, true. Yeah. I think,
Marines don't have to win every single engagement.
No.
And, people will still buy them if they like them. And that's the big thing. If they like something, they'll buy it anyway. If they dislike something, there's no amount of trickery will get them into buying it.
If that's the case, do you think Games Workshop understand that? Because looking at the lore, Marines do win all the time. And there are certain armies that do get a disproportionate amount of airtime and wins. So do you think that that's something Games Workshop even understands? That they understand that it doesn't really matter what you do with the lore. If the lore's cool, it doesn't really matter who wins and loses, so long as people are getting airtime and people aren't made to look weak. You know what I mean? What do you reckon? Do you think they understand that correlation at all, or do you reckon it's completely?
Nah, they don't understand.
Nah.
No, I don't think they understand that at all. In fact, if anything, I'd say that they have so little faith in their audience to make decisions for themselves, they would rather just dictate to you what you would like, should like, will buy.
Which is why every Games Workshop manager you've ever known has walked you straight over to the Space Marine section. Even when you've just told him you're starting an Eldar army, he wanders over, his legs just automatically take it. I've been guilty of that. I've done it, right? Somebody comes into my store. Hey man, hey dude, hey, what are you into now? Oh, I'm gonna do some Necrons. Okay, cool. And I'm already walking over to the Ultramarines. Like, I'm literally, my legs are doing it, or my training is taking over automatically to walk over there. It does happen, folks. We are told, literally, or at least we were when I was there, that try and push Marines, try and get as many of them as you can out the door, because there are bigger sellers, and there are flagship brand is the Space Marine. That's the reason why they changed the helmets with the Primaris Marines to look less like Darth Vader, so they're not that open to being sued. They want their own thing to be their own thing, and unfortunately, I think you're kind of right. I think they don't really get the fact that look at that. Grey Knights are very popular. They lose all the time in the lore. I can't remember the last win the Grey Knights got in the lore. Still very popular. Because the Grey Knights, look at them. Awesome. They're knights in space who hunt demons. What would you not like? That Space Wizards dude in power armor. What do you not want to collect about that? I think that what they don't really realize is that the lore and the game are very separate. I think they're more separate than people give it credit for. I think a lot of the people, where the lore and the games intercede, is Horus Heresy. Those are the fans that you want to be careful of. Because those are the fans that if they read shit that isn't right in the lore, they'll say, hang on a minute. That's nonsense. Do you know what I mean? Or if a unit comes out that's woefully underpowered compared to what it is in the lore, Horus Heresy players will quite rightly call it out and say, well, hang on a minute. Like, they're supposed to be these guys who can literally, tank a Primarch for 1 or 2 blows, and you're telling me they're dying to, las pistols? Like, what's going on? Right? Look aside, 40k isn't really like that. 40k for me, the lore and the game are two completely different entities. Completely. And I think that the setting sells the game, and the lore is the lore. So the wider setting and how cool it is sells 40k, and you go, oh, I like these Grey Knight dudes, I like these Necrons, I like whatever. The actual internal pieces of the lore are only really used by the Anoraks of those factions to get more shit, to get more stuff that they like, Whereas the game and lore of 40k are two really different things, separated by an iron curtain. Whereas in Horus Heresy, I don't think that curtain's there. Do you reckon I'm right there, or do you reckon that's another I'm being bonkers again?
I think that the whole Horus Heresy one is a lot less clear cut than that. I'd love to give our, the other people playing the game that sort of grace, but I don't see it. I mean, they wouldn't have absorbed the end and the death the way they did, which is frankly terrible end to an underwhelming book series. The way it sort of finished up, the Siege of Terror is just awful, and just the you can almost feel the authors jerking themselves off as they wrote those last few novels. Just how fucking good am I? Fuck, I'm the best. Like, just putting it into an AI prompt and getting the AI to just read it back to them in like a text-to-speech voice. They just listen to their own words and fuck, I can write.
Yeah.
That's how it came off to me. It's a side rant, but I think that's there's an awful lot of Horus Heresy fans who have frankly no taste buds at all.
I think
they don't care because they're happy.
I think a lot of the I think this is a case of me knowing about 8 dudes who are into Horus Heresy, and all of them have the same opinion as you. Where they're just like, this is a load of fucking nonsense. What's going on? Like, what have you done to my boy? Like, why is this? Why is this 10-book series 75 books long? Like, what's going on? But I guess you're well overexposed compared to me of Horus Heresy players. In that, I had no idea it was like that. Literally, I had no idea. I had no idea it was that bad.
I mean, it's to be honest, no offense to anyone, it's the UK. The UK is just the den of bad taste, and I think in part it's because I'm going to throw some shots out here. It's because we've subsidized your hobby for you.
Yeah.
Everyone else around the world has had the extra prices and picked up the slack that has been able to allow them to develop your hobby for you. And you've sat there enjoying the good prices. And whenever anyone else complained about prices, it was, they're fine here. There's no problem. Or like arbitrarily looking up like an average wage of a country not the medium wage, you know, and then just going like, oh well, you know, it looks here like you'll earn $100,000, you
Yeah.
know, whatever it might be, and it's bred a sort of, you know, an elitist attitude where UK Horus Heresy players seem to be like a completely different breed of player to other players. I'm not saying we're superior here. It's just we've got completely different outlooks, and the way we, you know, look at the universe of 40k and 30k. And I think, frankly, the UK people are the ones who have the best ability to push back because you're there, you can get in the ear of the staff. You haven't, so you've let the team down. It's sort of my feeling on that. Sorry, those who I just offended, but
No,
you know,
I
prove me
mean,
wrong.
I think you've got a point in the subsidy department. What I will also say is that there's one thing that doesn't really handle that out, and that's the biggest markets. But that may be because of population rather than anything else. I think if you go on per person spend, Australia is probably one of the highest if you're gonna look at it that way. But in terms of like their actual biggest markets, they're the UK and the US. Those are the two biggest cash cows for them.
Oh, for sure.
But,
You know, and I'm never gonna say otherwise. But
yeah.
it's like, you know, yeah, you have a great market here, taking it for granted, as far as the company's concerned. But yeah, the actual players themselves, like,
Yeah.
for all the bad practices that have happened, like, you know, whether it's the novels selling out the way they have, like, it's you guys you know, and girls that could have done something about it, and you waited till all the rest of us cracked the sads with it first, and now you're saying something, and you wonder why the company thinks that they can just do the things they do in both corporate and in the law. I honestly think that's why.
Well, that's the very thing. Is that I swear to God, I've made this point more than once. Even in our own videos, is that, you know, when I was working there, the amount of complaints that I got about, you know, the law and about the models and about the manager that I was working for, but these guys would still turn up every week, like they didn't go anywhere. Like they would complain about this manager, and they'd say he's the worst thing ever, and he's ruining our hobby, and we hate it. We hate coming to Games Workshop. It's like, yeah, dude, we're having this conversation in my Games Workshop store. What do you mean you hate coming here? You're here every day for 4 or 5 hours. What are you talking about? Yeah, and I think I don't know whether that's a wider hobby commentary thing, or if it's just UK, but it's something that I really noticed, is that they will stand in the fire and complain it's hot and it's burning them. Just step off it then. Like, literally, send them an email, send them a letter. Go to them and say, look, I'm not happy with this, and I'll take my money elsewhere until you change it. Alright, you may think that you're just a drop in the bucket, or a drop in the ocean, sorry, but if enough people do that, things do start to change. Like, we've seen it. Games Workshop are a much different company. As much as we complain, because, you know, they still could be doing a lot better, they're still a better company than they were at the turn of the millennium. You know, when they literally weren't listening to you, they didn't give a shit about anything you had to say. You know, they treated you with absolute disdain. And that's from the horse's mouth, right? And a lot of those guys from back then still don't like you. They still don't like the fan base at all. Look at you as filth. You know, just buy the models and give me an easy job. You know, give me an easy job. The one thing that they always loved to do at training days was take the piss out of the fan base all the time. You know, never partook in it because I that's me. Do you know what I mean? I've just joined the company, you know, so you're literally talking shit about me. Thanks. Like, I'm sitting right here, and you're saying that we're all troglodytes and we should just hand over the money and shit like that. So, again, the company has changed, and it's you guys who've done that. It's people who say, I'm not paying for this. I'm not doing this. I'm not. Vote with your wallet. Go away. Go do something else. If you don't like it, buy your models from elsewhere. You know, you don't need Games Workshop to like the hobby. You don't. I don't care how many shills on Reddit tell you that you do. You don't, right? That's something that I'm seeing an alarming rise in, is that people are starting to equate Games Workshop and wargaming as the same thing. They're not the same thing. That's like me telling you that electronic arts and gaming are the same thing. They're not, right? Take your money, go elsewhere. That's all you need. And there are some people in like New Zealand, Australia, who've had no fucking choice. but to do that. They've had no choice. They've had to say, look, I can't afford your bloody prices anymore. I've got to go on eBay, or I've got to go to a reseller, you know, and get my models that way. If you've got a hobby that does that, your hobby's fucking broken. I don't care how much money it's making. It's broken and it's unsustainable. And the reason, and we get into this every single time, by the way, we can start on a lore discussion, but this is how intrinsic everything is in Warhammer and in wargaming, is we can start in lore, but it always comes back to Games Workshop's business practices. That's the thing, right? It always comes back to that. That is the center of the iceberg. It's the singularity of the wargaming black hole. Is that it's Games Workshop's business practices, and you know, we just had a discussion there on why the lore is seemingly perverted to because Games Workshop are afraid of losing sales. Well, again, there's a very, very good reason for, you know, it's all in the same bracket. And back to what you said before about the UK, I'm not sure if the attitude's different in Australia. A few hobby nightmares I've come across tend to suggest that it is the same. But do you get that? Do you get a lot of people in Horus Heresy? I know you said that you do with the lore, but do you get a lot of people in Horus Heresy looking at the prices and going, it's fine? Or is there as much of a pushback as I think there maybe should be in countries like Australia, where they're like, I'm not fucking paying this anymore. I can't. I've got rent to pay.
Yeah, no, that pushback here is very, very real. As I was saying before we started, so I was playing some footage from an event I went to on the weekend just gone. And at the event, dude who won like best painted, and this is like, you know, the players are voting on this. There's the handing out the awards, the judges say, you know, his army is all pure Games Workshop, and and then we booed. Now we know the guy, we like the guy, but people just could not care less for the company because we've been really, really let down by it. And it's like, it's nothing to be proud of that we're spending the money on it, you know, anymore. And that's a shame, because I want to support them. Like, people ask me like silly questions. I think it's silly. They're like, oh, if you don't like it, why don't you leave? It's like, well, I'm trying to fix the problem in my own the only way I sort of know how, which is, you know, to say something.
Yeah.
It's all good and well for me to crack the SADs because, I don't like their prices, I don't like their law, I don't like their business model, whatever it is. But if I just walk away, then all I've done is I've just left that problem to someone else. And it's like, what, do you want it to get to the point where it's so bad and everyone is left that the whole thing just sinks? Is that what people want? Because that's what you'll get if you're not willing to, you know, actually call them out and stand up and try and fix it in some capacity.
I think well, we've gone off lore again because we always do
every
this
time.
We're just like, they're all dickheads, aren't they? Yeah, let's get involved in it. I think, again, like as we said last time, like, this isn't the Games Workshop should be one of the best companies in the world, and in terms of the fan base that they've got and the IP that they've got, and there's nothing wrong with holding people to standards, and that's in the lore too. You know, the lore is very much, just as a closing point, the lore to me is very much a euphemism for Games Workshop as a whole. It really is. Like if you see what they do with the lore and how they affect it, and how they try and downplay certain factions here and they upgrade certain factions there. It always seems to be around the new release. It always seems to be around the fact that they're terrified that you as people, you as hobbyists, won't buy their models if they lose an imaginary battle at some point. Do you know what I mean? I mean, look at Napoleonic Wars. What's the most popular army in Napoleonic Wars and all those war games? Napoleon, the French. They lose. Still the most popular army though, right? And that actually happened. It's not something that just happened in willy-nilly land. It actually happened. So I don't get
great
why.
example. How many people love playing Germans in video games?
Yeah.
In World War II games.
Yeah.
You know, it's people are fine playing the loser in something. Same as like a Total War is a great example. You know, how many times have you played a faction Total War? Like, you know, you're playing Rome. Well, do you want to play as the Gauls in Rome? Because it doesn't end well for them.
No.
Spoilers.
The
You know,
Carthage. Go and play Carthage for a bit. And I mean, the reason why I'm doing Word Bearers is because they have very little lore. You know, they have some lore, but like most of the battles aren't really documented. Most of the things that they did aren't really documented. Because I think Games Workshop have never really touched them, because it's just like, well, you know, they're the bad guys. Like, okay, well, that's fine. Why is that? You know, and they lose all the time. Okay, well, why is that? You know, there's a reason why the Shattered Legions are so popular. We see Iron Hands all the time in Horus Heresy. Like, they're one of the most popular guys I've seen on Instagram all the time. Most of the Horus Heresy factions I see are maybe not salamanders, because I don't know. You're the only person I know who does salamanders, because you're weird. I don't know why no one else seems to touch them. But Iron Hands, Raven Guard, they're everywhere. Like, everybody seems like, because you want to readdress that balance. You want to fight for something, right? You've taken an L, a real L, and that's more interesting. The flaws of a character are more interesting than all of their strengths put together. The fact that the Iron Hands lost Ferrus Manus, spoilers, but if that's a spoiler to you, then I don't know what to say to you, dude. The fact that they lost Ferrus Manus is a huge boon for them. It's only not a boon to the brainless fucking meme tards out there who like to take the piss out of other people's lore, right? It's only a boon to them. Like, not a boon to them. Everybody else, if you know anything about writing, losing your Primarch in such a way as a motivation for your army and your characters and your lore going forwards is a massive shot in the arm. Huge. Absolutely huge. Same thing goes for, on a lesser extent, the Salamanders, because Vulcan just keeps coming back. It's not really, you know, they don't really lose him. But the Raven Guard too, you know, they go along to try and make more Space Marines, right? And it goes completely wrong, and you know, Corvus Corax turns into an emo. But all of these things are more interesting than the Space Wolves. Do you know? Because the Space Wolves just win all the time. All of these things are more interesting than the Ultramarines, because the Ultramarines just win all the time. The Iron Hands are much more interesting from a narrative standpoint, because they're allowed to lose. They lost once, and they spent the last 10,000 years trying to set that right, and that makes me want to cheer them on. It makes me want to collect them. And that's why it's a big tragedy to me, back to Macca's point before, on his third point there, that Games Workshop don't seem to understand that losses are a good thing. If you give a faction a steady loss, like a big one, that's understandable, doesn't make them look weak, right? But you give them a tragic loss, where they take a real bloody nose, it makes you want to collect that army to set things right. You know, you go and seek out, if you're a Thousand Suns player, you go and seek out Space Wolf players. Right? You go, right, I'm fucking, and you're like, I'm gonna fucking, and you go and try and set it right. That's a beautiful piece of lore game harmony there. It's much better to take your fair share of losses in the lore than it is to just fucking win all the time. You know? What do you think about that? It's just a closing point. What do you reckon?
No, fully agree. Fully agree. It's so much, you know, it invigorates you to be able to make the narrative your own. And when you're freed of restrictions, of this must happen, this must happen, this must happen, it feels nice. Feels rewarding. And yeah, you know, the stories currently kind of hold us back in that regard, unfortunately. And so having, you know, when we're freed up, it's liberating. It's exactly the word for it, is liberating. And yeah, I fully agree with everything you just said there.
I just love the amount of Thousand Suns players that I know. Okay, it's only 2 of them. But if they're at an event and they see a Space Wolf player, they will start orbiting him. Like, waiting to play him. Just all the time. It's like, I don't care what else I do today. This is a head I must have. It's just really funny. Even if they lose the game, I don't care. I want to kill some Space Wolves. It's a beautiful thing. And if you do the lore right, that's what you get. Yeah, you get that.
It doesn't hurt that nobody's ever said, man, those Space Wolves players are the most chill.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, just like howling all the time. It's like, oh, okay, dude, come on. All right, well, that's me.
Yeah.
I'm done. I've finished my points. You finish your points. If you think we're both mental, put it in the comment section down below. I can't wait to read what you guys think. I know we came up with some ideas here, but what do you guys think you would change about the lore of Warhammer 40k or 30k in general? Let me know in the comment section down below. Thank you very much for coming along, Maka. Thank you very much, man. It's also always awesome having you over here so we can have a little bit of a chat.
Thank you very much for having me. Always appreciated.
No worries. I'll see you later, guys. Have a good one. Bye now.